I never thought a simple birthday party would change my life forever. But the moment I saw those two little girls sitting alone in the corner, tears streaming down their faces while chaos swirled around them, I knew I had to do something, and what happened next still brings me to tears every single time I think about it. Let me ask you this. Was I overstepping my boundaries by getting involved in someone else's family situation, or did I do exactly what any decent human being should have done? I need you to tell me honestly in the comments, because even now, months later, I still wonder if I made the right call that day. My name is Marcus, and I'm a 42-year-old single dad raising my son Jamie, who's 8 years old now. Life hasn't been easy for us since my wife Sarah passed away 3 years ago from cancer. But we've built something beautiful together, just the two of us against the world. I work as a software developer from home, which gives me the flexibility to be there for Jamie whenever he needs me, to pick him up from school, to help with homework, to tuck him into bed every single night. One of the things I'm most proud of in my life is that after Sarah died, I made a promise to myself that I would learn sign language. You see, Sarah had a younger brother who was deaf, and watching her communicate with him so effortlessly, watching the joy and connection they shared, it always moved me deeply. After she passed, I continued learning as a way to honor her memory, and honestly, it became therapeutic for me, a way to feel close to her even though she was gone. I took online courses, practiced every single day, joined a local deaf community group, and within 2 years, I became pretty fluent. Jamie learned right alongside me, and now both of us can sign comfortably, which has opened up our world in ways I never imagined. About 6 months ago, Jamie got invited to a birthday party for a classmate named Tyler, whose family had just moved to our neighborhood. Tyler seemed like a nice kid, always polite when I'd see him at school pickup, and Jamie was excited to go celebrate with him. The party was being held at one of those fancy indoor play centers, the kind with trampolines and obstacle courses and arcade games, the works. When we arrived that Saturday afternoon, the place was packed with kids running everywhere, parents chatting in groups, music blasting from the speakers, just complete sensory overload, honestly. I dropped Jamie off and told him I'd be back in 2 hours to pick him up, but as I was turning to leave, something caught my eye. In the far corner of the main party room, away from all the noise and activity, sat two identical little girls who looked to be about 6 or 7 years old. They were beautiful kids with dark curly hair pulled back in matching pink ribbons, wearing identical purple dresses, clearly twins. But what stopped me in my tracks was the expression on their faces. They looked absolutely miserable, tears running down their cheeks, their little shoulders shaking, and nobody, not a single adult or child, was paying any attention to them whatsoever. I hesitated for a moment because I didn't want to be that weird guy approaching someone else's kids at a party, but something in my gut told me these girls needed help. I walked over slowly, crouched down to their level, and smiled gently. They looked up at me with these enormous brown eyes full of confusion and sadness. I said hello, but neither of them responded. I tried again, a little louder in case they couldn't hear me over the music, but still nothing. That's when it clicked in my brain, and I don't know why I hadn't thought of it immediately, but I started signing to them. I signed, "Hello, my name is Marcus, are you okay?" And the transformation on their faces was instantaneous and absolutely magical. Their eyes went wide with shock and then pure relief. And the older twin, I would later learn her name was Emma, signed back frantically, "You can talk to us, you understand us." The younger one, Lily, just burst into fresh tears, but this time, they were tears of relief rather than distress. Through sign language, they told me their story, and honestly, it broke my heart into a million pieces right there. Their names were Emma and Lily. They were 7 years old, and they were both profoundly deaf, had been since birth. Their father, whose name was Jonathan, was apparently some big-shot CEO of a tech company. Always busy, always working, always traveling. Their mother had left when they were babies, just walked out and never came back, so Jonathan was raising them alone with the help of nannies and caregivers. Tyler, the birthday boy, was Jonathan's nephew, his sister's son, and the girls had been brought to the party by their current nanny, a woman named Patricia, who they signed about with obvious dislike. Patricia had dropped them off in this corner, told them to sit still and behave, and then disappeared to chat with the other adults, leaving these two vulnerable little girls completely isolated in a room full of hearing people who couldn't communicate with them. They had no idea what was going on. They didn't know any of the other kids. They couldn't participate in any of the games or activities because nobody was explaining anything to them or including them, and they felt completely invisible and alone. Emma signed to me with such raw emotion. Nobody ever talks to us at these things. We always just sit and watch. We hate parties. My heart was absolutely shattered, and I made a decision right then and there. I signed to them, well, that changes right now. Would you like to actually have some fun at this party? Their faces lit up like Christmas morning, and they both nodded enthusiastically. I spent the next hour and a half with Emma and Lily, and it was honestly one of the most rewarding experiences of my entire life. I took them around to all the different activity stations, explained what each game was through sign language, helped them participate, cheered them on, made them laugh. We jumped on the trampolines together. I held their hands as they navigated the obstacle course. We played arcade games, and I showed them how each one worked. We even did face painting where they both chose to be butterflies with glitter everywhere. Other kids started noticing and including them too once I was there facilitating. And soon Emma and Lily were actually playing with the group, actually part of the party instead of observers on the sidelines. I taught some of the other children a few basic signs like hello and friend and thank you, and watching these kids communicate across the language barrier, even in such a simple way, was absolutely beautiful. During cake time, I made sure the girls were seated right at the main table with all the other kids, and I sat nearby signing the happy birthday song for them so they could understand what was happening. They sang along in sign language, their little hands moving enthusiastically, huge smiles on their faces, and I noticed several parents watching with interest, some even taking videos on their phones. Patricia, the nanny, finally appeared again looking irritated, and she came over demanding to know who I was and why I was with the girls. I explained calmly that I'd found them crying and alone, and that I knew sign language, so I was helping them participate in the party. She huffed and said they were fine, that they were used to entertaining themselves, that I didn't need to concern myself with them. The way she said it, so dismissive and cold, made my blood boil. But I kept my composure and simply responded, well, they're having a wonderful time now, and I'm happy to help. She walked away muttering something under her breath, clearly annoyed but not willing to make a scene. When the party was winding down and parents were starting to collect their kids, I saw a tall man in an expensive suit stride into the facility looking rushed and stressed, checking his phone constantly. He called out for Emma and Lily, and the girls' faces fell immediately when they saw him. They signed to me, "That's our dad. We have to go now." I walked over with them, and this man, Jonathan, barely looked up from his phone as he said, "Come on, girls, we're late. I have a conference call in 30 minutes. I cleared my throat and said, "Excuse me, sir, I'm Marcus. It's nice to meet you." He glanced at me briefly, shook my hand distractedly and said, "Jonathan Blake, thanks for watching them, I guess. Patricia said someone was helping out." I took a deep breath and said, "Your daughters are amazing. They're smart and funny and creative, and they had a wonderful time today once someone took the time to communicate with them." He looked confused, finally putting his phone in his pocket, and asked what I meant. I explained how I'd found them alone and crying, how nobody at the party could sign with them, how isolated they'd been until I got involved. For the first time, Jonathan actually looked at his daughters, really looked at them, and I saw something flicker across his face, guilt maybe, or shame, I couldn't tell. So that's the situation I was in, standing there with this powerful CEO who clearly had no idea how lonely his own children were, watching these two beautiful little girls who had just experienced maybe their first truly inclusive social event in who knows how long. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause right now and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have walked away and minded your own business? Or would you have said something more? Would you have pushed the issue, or would you have let it go? I really want to know because the choice I made in that next moment set off a chain of events that nobody could have predicted. I looked Jonathan directly in the eyes and said something that I'd been holding back, something that probably wasn't my place to say, but that needed to be said anyway. I told him, "Mr. Blake, I don't know you and I don't know your situation, but what I do know is that your daughters are being raised by people who can't communicate with them in their own language, and that's not okay. They told me they always feel invisible at social events, that nobody ever talks to them, that they hate going to parties because they just sit alone. These girls deserve better than that. They deserve a father who can sign with them, who can understand them, who can make them feel seen and heard. The words came out more harshly than I'd intended, and I saw Jonathan's face go red, but I couldn't stop myself. I continued, "I'm a single dad too. I get that it's hard. I get that you're busy. But your kids need you to show up for them in the way that they need, not just in the way that's convenient for you." The entire area around us had gone quiet. Several parents were staring, and I was certain I'd just made a terrible mistake. Jonathan stood there for a long moment, his jaw clenched, and I genuinely thought he was going to explode at me, or maybe even call security. But then, to my absolute shock, his eyes filled with tears. This powerful, intimidating businessman just crumbled right there in the middle of a children's play center. He looked down at Emma and Lily and signed, very slowly and clumsily, "I'm sorry," and the girls' mouths dropped open in surprise. He turned back to me and said in a voice thick with emotion, "You're right, you're absolutely right, and I hate that a complete stranger had to tell me what I should have already known. I've been so focused on work, on providing for them financially, on building the company, that I've completely failed them in every way that actually matters. Their mother left because she couldn't handle having deaf children. She said it was too hard, too much work, and I've been so angry at her for abandoning them that I didn't realize I was doing the exact same thing in a different way." He pulled out his phone, made a quick call, and canceled his conference call right then and there. He told his daughters in halting, imperfect sign language that they were going out for ice cream, just the three of them, and that he was sorry for not being there. Before they left, Jonathan asked for my contact information, and honestly, I was hesitant to give it to him because I didn't know what he wanted, but something told me to trust my instincts. I wrote down my email and phone number, and he thanked me profusely, told me he owed me more than I could possibly know. Emma and Lily each gave me the biggest hugs, and Lily signed, "Thank you for making us happy today," which absolutely destroyed me emotionally. I watched them walk out together, Jonathan holding both girls' hands, and I hoped desperately that this wasn't just a temporary moment of clarity for him, but rather the beginning of real change. 2 days later, I got an email from Jonathan asking if he could take me out for coffee, that he wanted to talk more. We met that weekend at a local cafe, and he opened up to me in a way that was incredibly vulnerable and honest. He told me about his ex-wife leaving, about his guilt and anger, about how he'd thrown himself into work as a way to avoid dealing with his emotions, about how he'd hired the best nannies and sent the girls to the best schools, but had never actually learned to communicate with them properly himself. He'd taken a few basic sign language classes years ago but had given up, telling himself he was too busy, that the nannies could handle it. He asked me, almost desperately, if I would be willing to help him learn sign language properly, to teach him how to connect with his daughters. I was surprised by the request, but I agreed immediately because I could see he was genuinely trying to change. Over the next several months, Jonathan and I met twice a week for sign language lessons, and I also connected him with the deaf community group I was part of. He was terrible at first, constantly making mistakes and getting frustrated with himself, but he never gave up. He practiced every single day. He started having dinners with his daughters, where they all only used sign language. He reduced his work hours dramatically. He fired Patricia and hired a new caregiver who was deaf herself and could be a positive role model for the girls. The transformation in Emma and Lily was remarkable. They went from being withdrawn and sad to being vibrant, confident, joyful children who knew their father loved them and could communicate with them. Jonathan started bringing them to the deaf community events, and they made friends with other deaf children and adults, built a whole support network that they'd never had before. Jamie and I became close friends with Jonathan and the girls, and our families started spending time together regularly. The kids all adored each other, and Jamie was so proud to show off his signing skills to his new friends. Jonathan told me multiple times that I had saved his relationship with his daughters, that I'd woken him up to what actually mattered in life. But honestly, I think he would have figured it out eventually. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, with the right skills to hold up a mirror and make him see what he was missing. About 4 months after that initial party, Jonathan invited Jamie and me to Emma and Lily's 8th birthday celebration, and it was completely different from that first party. This one was smaller, more intimate, held at their home, and every single guest knew at least basic sign language. Jonathan had specifically asked parents to learn some signs before coming, and he even hired a sign language interpreter to make sure everyone could communicate. Watching Emma and Lily surrounded by people who could talk to them, who included them, who made them feel valued, seeing them laughing and playing and being completely present and happy, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed. Jonathan pulled me aside during the party and handed me an envelope, and when I opened it, I found a check for an enormous amount of money, more money than I'd make in 6 months of work. I immediately tried to give it back, told him I didn't help his family for money, that I'd never accept payment for doing what any decent person should do, but he insisted. He said it wasn't payment, it was a donation to the Deaf Commune Nitty Center I'd introduced him to, made in Sarah's name, in honor of my late wife who had inspired me to learn sign language in the first place. I completely broke down crying right there, and we hugged for a long time. Two single dads who had both lost someone important and were just trying to do right by their kids. The donation ended up funding new programs at the community center, including free sign language classes for hearing parents of deaf children, which has helped dozens of families since then. Today, almost 6 months after that first fateful party, Jonathan is basically fluent in sign language, and his relationship with Emma and Lily is absolutely thriving. He stepped back from his CEO role, promoted someone else to handle the day-to-day operations so he can focus more on being present as a father. The girls are excelling in school, they're involved in activities they love, they have friends and confidence and joy in their lives. Jonathan and I have become genuine friends, and our families are deeply connected now. He tells people that I changed his life, but the truth is, Emma and Lily changed mine just as much. They reminded me why I learned sign language in the first place. They gave me a purpose beyond just honoring Sarah's memory. They showed me that the skills I'd worked so hard to develop could make a real tangible difference in someone's life. Looking back on that day, I still sometimes wonder if I overstepped, if I had any right to confront a stranger about his parenting, if I should have just minded my own business and walked away. But then I think about Emma and Lily's faces when I first signed to them, that pure relief and joy, and I think out how happy they are now. How confident and connected to their father, and I know in my heart that I made the right choice. Sometimes we're put in situations where we have to decide between being polite and being kind, between staying silent and speaking up, and I chose to speak up for two little girls who couldn't speak up for themselves. I chose to see them when everyone else was looking away, and that choice changed multiple lives for the better. So let me ask you one final time. Do you think I did the right thing that day, or should I have stayed out of it? I genuinely want to hear your thoughts on this whole situation because even though it worked out beautifully, I know it could have gone very differently. If you think I was right to intervene, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments. If you think I overstepped my boundaries, I want to hear that too. Tell me honestly what you would have done differently. Make sure to subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more real-life stories like this one. Stories about ordinary people in extraordinary situations trying to do the right thing. Share your own experiences in the comments if you've ever had to make a difficult choice about getting involved in someone else's situation. I read every single comment, and I love hearing from you all. This story will always hold a special place in my heart, and I'm so grateful to have been able to share it with you today. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and I'll see you all in the next story.